Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Limitless 2022 for children, for change, for life. World Vision's Asia Summit for Corporate Good. Join us in this virtual space where we can share ideas for a better world. Please watch this theme setter video as we kick off our summit. Limitless 2022 has the theme From Crisis to Hope: How Corporations Can Lead Sustainable Change. This summit aims to deliver impactful sessions on today's most critical topics and bring together bright minds to share their experience and expertise on these issues relevant to sustainable development to inspire and foster learning. We are very happy to be joined by almost 600 corporations and partners who will exchange views and create plans to positively impact children across the Asia Pacific over these 2 days. Before we begin our summit proper, we would like to establish a few program guidelines to ensure that our summit would go smoothly and run on schedule. Should you have any questions during the sessions, you may send them in through the Q&A tab found at the top right corner of your screens. The public chat is open for everyone to send in their thoughts and comments throughout the sessions. Program reminders will also be sent in through this chat. The country booths are open throughout the day. We encourage you to visit each one of them to get to know more about World Vision and its field offices. The lounge is open throughout the day. Please feel free to virtually roam around and meet like-minded and like-hearted individuals attending today's sessions. As we thrive to better ourselves every year, we are encouraging you to send us your thoughts and comments on today's event. Access link to your online feedback form will be shared via chat prompt at the end of today's session. With these program guidelines in mind, we hope to give both our speakers and you, our audience, a conducive online atmosphere and a seamless, interactive, insightful, and meaningful summit. So at this time, we have the first session, the opening plenary, and we have an august gathering of speakers joining us as well. No poverty, zero hunger, access to healthcare, education, clean water, sanitation and clean energy, gender equality and lower inequality. These are the visions presented by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals. World Vision is committed to achieving the global goals and ending extreme poverty by 2030. The SDGs are core to our promise, and we believe the role of business is fundamental, both to transition away from practices that undermine the goals' achievement and to proactively create solutions that solve existing challenges. To formally open today's summit on how we can turn crisis to hope by leading sustainable change, Please welcome on stage the moderator for the opening plenary, Mr. Cherian Thomas, Regional Leader, World Vision in South Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Cherian oversees operations of World Vision in 10 countries across this region. He earlier served as National Director and CEO of World Vision in India. Mr. Cherian has worked in the areas of infrastructure banking, project finance, policy advocacy, capacity building, program support, and advisory services for corporate and government clients and community engagement. With more than 36 years of experience in diverse fields, he joined World Vision in 2015. Thank you for taking the time, Cherian, and over to you.
Thank you, Rahul, for your very kind words of introduction. Let me once again wish a good morning, and I know for some of you it would be afternoon and evening, to all those who have joined us, and a warm welcome to all of you participating in Limitless 2022, which is World Vision's Corporate Engagement Summit, being held for the first time and virtually at that, today and tomorrow, and which ultimately, as we are reminded, is for children, the most vulnerable, for change in their lives, and for life for them in all fullness. We've also seen a snapshot of how COVID-19, which has been the biggest health crisis in the last 100 years, has seen the reversal of much of the gains that we have seen in poverty reduction, in reduced child vulnerability over the last 2 to 3 decades. In fact, some of the initial estimates indicated that 120 million people globally would have moved below the poverty line. Assessment surveys in some of the communities where we work in the Asia Pacific region in the last couple of years have shown the impact of COVID has been significantly negative. Very diminished livelihood opportunities for the poor, negative economic impact affecting children and communities. We have seen how nutrition and food security gains of the last 5 years have been wiped out. In terms of education and access to education, we have seen how 1 in 5 children have not had any form of education whatsoever during this period. The return of many children to economic activity and to issues that are called child labor have been a matter of concern. Child marriage, increasing child abuse have also been matters of concern. And equally important, one of the issues that has been identified is the mental health of children. Increased anxiety and fear of the future has been a characteristic. Ironically, this has also been a period when we have seen, in some sense, the rich getting richer, the poor actually getting poorer. And we have seen increased economic inequality. And also, apart from economic and social inequality, one of the signs of our modern age, the whole area of digital access and the digital divide itself has become so much more pronounced. COVID-19 is not fully eliminated, and yet we have already been beset by a war in Ukraine, which has such severe global ramifications. The skyrocketing prices of oil and gas, food grains, and several other essentials necessary for living have caused problems for the poor. We had seen the beginning of the drought and the hunger crisis in Africa, and we were all responding to it. It was already so severe that has been badly exacerbated by the war as well. We have civil political unrest in various parts of the world, some of it directly attributable to the economic crisis, which we have just seen in Sri Lanka, which has led to such a dramatic change in political leadership. And hovering over all this is the alarmingly increasing negative impact of climate change on our world. High average temperatures, rising sea levels, unseasonal and unpredictable weather conditions, floods and droughts, food security, and loss of economic well-being. And so the question that everyone asks is there hope for the world? Will things get any better? Is there an inflection point in our journey where we would move from crisis to hope? The question for corporates and business is this: what role can corporations and businesses play in all this? We have, of course, in the last 3 decades come a long way from the view that the role of business is to be engaged in business and nothing else, and to leave the problems of poverty alleviation and social transformation to governments and NGOs. It is clear, however, that the problems and challenges of our world cannot be so easily compartmentalized. All stakeholders need to work together, engage, and find solutions. Countries like India, we'll be hearing about this a little later, as part of corporate legislation in the last decade, have mandated that a certain percentage, 2% of their pre-tax profits, are used towards CSR projects and programs. All responsible corporates and all of you who are here gathered today do it voluntarily, and you focus on what is called the triple bottom line, looking at people, profits, and the planet together. And that is why our discussions on how corporations can lead sustainable change is so important. And how we can support the journey from crisis to hope is a question that clearly needs to be answered. We would kick off this discussion in the plenary with four keynote addresses, as Rahul said, by four very distinguished speakers. And of course, we'd be discussing five critical themes in our subsequent sessions today and tomorrow. So to begin with, to try and answer the question, sustainability in a post-pandemic world, private sector as a leader and enabler, we have with us Ms. Kim C. Lim, who is the Regional Director for the International Finance Corporation, part of the World Bank Group. She oversees the implementation of IFC's East Asia and Pacific Regional Strategy, Investment and Advisory business. She has a career of over 25 years of investing in markets across Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, and Latin America, and a strong track record as a global investment professional and a leader in development finance. She has successfully led and motivated multicultural, multidisciplinary teams to execute on IFC's strategy and business globally. And most important, she is passionate about climate change, inclusive growth, and innovation. So we really look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Ms. Kim.
Thank you, Cherian. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our listeners and our participants today. Many sincere thanks to World Vision International Asia Pacific for hosting me today. It is indeed a privilege to be delivering this keynote address here today at this event. From my perspective, as a regional director for the IFC, the largest global development organization focused on the private sector in emerging markets, the topic we're discussing today is both apt and timely. Today, we're living in a world with overlapping crises, from the war in Ukraine and the ensuing risks to energy and food insecurity, which exert inflationary pressures and aggravate already high levels of poverty and inequality around the world. All of this comes just as we're emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic, which brought to fore the stark inequalities in everything from access to finance, education, healthcare, and other basic services. On top of this, we're all painfully aware of the climate crisis upon us. What is clear to us today is that the war in Ukraine has deepened the global economic slowdown and compounded the damage of the pandemic, elevating the risk of stagflation, which is a period of slow growth and high inflation, which we have not seen since the 1970s. Global growth is projected to slow from 5.7% in 2021 to 2.9% in 2022, marking the sharpest deceleration in more than 80 years. Growth is expected to remain weak for the next 2 years, hovering around 3%. Developing economies are expected to grow at about 3.4% in 2022, which is barely half the rate in 2021 and well below the 4.8% rate they averaged from 2011 to 2019. This year, the level of per capita income in developing economies will be nearly 5% below that of the pre-pandemic levels. Surging food and energy prices are fueling inflation, eroding incomes, particularly for the low-income households and for countries for which food and energy comprise a large share of expenditures. What is of particular concern is the global picture. Food price inflation is currently in double digits in 2/5 of the developing economies. And the World Bank estimates that suggests that with each 1% increase in food prices, up to 10 million more people will be living in extreme poverty. Then there's the hidden cost of these crises combined. COVID saw up to 1.6 billion students out of school. Women have been more likely to lose their jobs, while also facing more demand for caregiving and higher risk of gender-based violence. This is why at the IFC, In the Pacific in particular, our gender team have kept working with companies to raise awareness of the issues of domestic violence and to help companies understand that taking action benefits both their employees and the company's bottom line. Our gender team provided a women's leadership and financial literacy program at Tuna, one of the largest fishing companies in Solomon Islands, to help address gender-based violence. The program produced great results in that it helped the company reduce absenteeism by 1/3 and increase women in leadership by more than 267%. This is just one example where companies can help drive change. In response to the pandemic, IFC also stepped up and put together a total of $8 billion in emergency financial support to businesses across the world, including here in the Asia Pacific region. The support came in the form of liquidity to businesses so that they could maintain their businesses and keep the business afloat, and also to trade financing houses to reignite private investment and to support trade flows. We also launched a $4 billion global health platform to provide financing to manufacturers of healthcare products to increase access of critical healthcare supplies to the world. Here in Asia Pacific, we committed almost $2 billion of this COVID response to our clients to help them sustain the operations. These numbers represent lives saved, businesses lifted, communities protected, and opportunities created. These numbers also represent a cascading impact contributed by our clients in the private sector to their employees and to their families and so on, many of which are here in the summit. Working closely with us, our clients and partners around the world delivered business results with huge impact. For instance, we provided $40 million to Glenmark, a pharmaceutical manufacturer in India, to increase availability of affordable and quality medicines, including COVID-19 treatments in developing countries. We supported several social bond issuances. Cookmin Bank, $300 million, was the first local currency denominated social bond by a private bank in Indonesia. A $100 million social bond issued by Higher Financial Services China that help address financing gaps for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, or MSMEs. Also for the affordable housing sector, healthcare, education, and women enterprises, all in order to ease social issues in inequality, food safety, employment, and allow women enterprises to access finance. Reinvigorating the private sector in emerging markets and developing economies is critical for the post-COVID economic recovery. The future also demands that we venture even deeper into the world's most difficult places, while helping countries address systemic challenges such as climate change. Here's where the private sector is vital, not only because of the scope of innovation, but also because of improvements to productivity and economic efficiency. And most important of all, the ability to create jobs, which is the best pathway out of poverty. We know that COVID-19 has stretched public purses, and that simply means less funding is available, for instance, for meeting the country's climate goals. And this is critical in the face of the climate emergency we face today. Nowhere is this climate crisis more acute than in Asia. The East Asia Pacific region alone is home to the world's largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions, accounting for 1/3 of global carbon dioxide emissions and 60% of coal consumption. Based on current projections, the region's unprecedented economic development is expected to catapult coal power generation from 32% of the region's power generation to 50% by 2030. Asia is also home to some of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. The East Asia Pacific region has endured 70% of the world's natural disasters, while changing climate patterns are expected to impact over 800 million people in South Asia by 2050. Asia is also home to more than half of the world's population and is experiencing rapid urbanization. We are not investing quickly enough in green and resilient infrastructure, in education, health, or sustainable food production to keep pace with these changes. These trends have major consequences for human development, the sustainability of natural ecosystems, and for economic growth. The good news is that businesses and governments around the world are rallying to avert a climate catastrophe. More than 140 countries and 118 states and regions, accounting for over 90% of global GDP, already have net zero targets, and a further 100 countries are considering adopting one. In the private sector, more than 6,000 companies and investors representing 36 trillion US dollars in revenue have committed to climate action, with 1,100 committing to be net zero. Both the public and private sectors are struggling to turn these pledges into tangible plans. Of the 140 national climate plans, a recent study showed that just 6% are considered to have an adequate design. And a separate recent analysis of almost 500 corporate net zero targets revealed that only 11 are considered robust. The financing requirement is vast. Roughly $1 trillion per year in investment is required to finance the transition to low carbon economy in emerging markets alone. Corporations can lead by utilizing new technologies. There's a huge opportunity for venture capital targeting new technologies aimed at decarbonization. Once technologies are proven, they must be scaled to a point where they're affordable everywhere in the world, which results in opportunities to invest in these technologies and drive down the cost curves. Here at the IFC, we recently invested in Apple, a California-based startup company that has developed plant-based coating technology to keep fruits and vegetables fresh twice as long, and this helps to reduce food waste, which is a key greenhouse gas emitter. Companies can lead by example. We recently issued a blue loan to Indorama Ventures in Thailand, helping the company to increase its recycling capacity and achieve its goal of recycling 50 billion plastic bottles by 2025. This will divert plastic waste from landfills and oceans. Plastics is a huge problem. In fact, nowhere is this problem more acute than in Asia, which produces more than 80% of marine plastic waste. Companies can also work with governments to use innovative financing solutions to help upgrade infrastructure, which is a huge development challenge and encompasses everything from access to clean water to tackling social issues and climate change. IFC is supporting the government of India's flagship program, the National Mission for Clean Ganga, NMCG, by mobilizing private sector funding and expertise to treat wastewater around the river basins of India's holy river, the Ganga, a water source for more than 400 million people. An estimated 2.9 billion liters of wastewater is dumped into the river every day. IFC has invested in a sewage treatment plant in Kolkata with VA Tech Wabag, a firm focused on building clean water infrastructure around the globe. It's a project that has just won an award recognizing its potential transformative impact to improve drinking and industrial water supplies and reduce stress on the groundwater. Since 2017, IFC has supported the NMCG in 3 states to identify private sector partners for financing construction and operation of wastewater treatment plants in the river of Ganga. The aim is to show other states along the Holy River that private sector solutions can work and can ensure clean drinking water for people. Another innovation is sustainability-linked bonds. IFC's first investment globally in a sustainability-linked bond was in Asia Pacific. It was a 675 million Sing dollar offering from Sembcorp, an energy and urban development company based in Singapore, working in countries including Bangladesh, India, and Vietnam. Sembcorp has ambitions to shift its portfolio from brown to green and has set some of the most ambitious sustainability targets amongst energy players in Asia. A key goal is quadrupling its renewable energy capacity to 10 gigawatts by end of 2025. In Thailand, IFC worked with Pressure Shipping, Public Company Limited on a sustainability-linked financing package for transporting cement along the west coast of India and Sri Lanka, another critical dry goods commodity linked amid COVID-19 impacts. The sustainability-linked loan, the first for an infrastructure company in Thailand, has targets linked to sustainable development goals, reducing onshore source freshwater usage and consumption on board the company's vessels. We're also seeing corporations setting social targets. To give an example, IFC recently signed a deal with Anglo American for the first sustainability-linked loan in the mining sector globally, focused on exclusively on social indicators. It will help improve the quality of education for more than 73,000 students and promote job creation.
I'm sorry to
Companies and
interrupt.
businesses.
Could
Sorry,
you wrap up because we're running out of time
sure,
for the session? Yeah,
sure.
thank you.
Companies and businesses such as the ones you all lead in this room, all of you lead in this room, represent have great and important efforts to make. The private sector must be relentless in maximizing opportunities to lead the world. IFC will be there with you, as we always have been in crisis in the past, to help you maximize the limitless potential of corporate good. I wish you all a productive and inspiring 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim, for that very wonderful exposition on how corporates can drive change and how IFC is leading this process. We have seen so many examples that you have cited on both IFC directly as well as through the companies that it supports in the Asia Pacific region, being engaged in activities that really promote transformation. And I think you brought in the flavor of what the private sector can bring: innovation, research, technology, productivity, job creation, so critical in our current uh, environment, and the whole gamut of what they can do together with governments and other players in reducing and mitigating the impact of climate change. The whole area of decarbonization, moving to a low carbon track, the whole area of water and wastewater, plastic waste, and you cited even large examples of the Clean Ganga mission in India, where you talk of how corporates can be engaged in this very large effort of the government of India. Thank you so much, and I'm sure that you'd be able to share your message, and that we'd be able to circulate it to all the participants. There are so many interesting ideas there, and I'm sure we would all love to engage with IFC in making sure that some of these can be implemented in our own specific places. Thank you so much once more for sharing this with us. We move on to the next address, and for this we have Dr. Rakesh Ranjan, who is the project director for the aspirational districts with the Niti Aayog, India's leading economic social think tank established by the government of India. He is from the Indian Police Service, IPS. He's the mission director of this entire program, which aims at rapid transformation of identified underdeveloped pockets in India, actively supporting transition towards database governance, and where districts are actually ranked on a real-time basis on the basis of data in terms of where they are. He heads a team on creation of a federal knowledge portal, Ease of Living Index. He has in the past received the President's Police Medal for meritorious service and for distinguished service over the last 20 years. He also was part of the team which finalized the strategy for efficient urbanization in the 12th five-year plan in India, and was a committee of the Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, and continues to be a convener of the Committee on Capacity Building and Urban Planning. He would speak to us on one of the initiatives which has been taken by India and which is being pursued, which is the whole area of corporate social responsibility, with the initiative taken by the government through legislation. So he would talk on the theme corporate social responsibility and its role in India's sustainable development. So over to you, Rakesh.
Well, a very good morning to all of you. Am I audible? The first thing. Cherin, you are not. So, am I audible? Again, the second confirmation. Good morning, Rahul. Anybody? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. I think they just took me off so that you could speak. Yes, thank you.
So good morning, and let me thank the World Vision for inviting us. And it's always a pleasure to speak on a conference on which there are large number of representatives of the corporate world are there in our quest to solve one of the biggest challenges and problem that we are facing in the world. So I'll start with 2 minutes of the observations on what we feel, reflections. If you really look at the world today, about 20 years back or 30 years back, when we talked about all these development goals, Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals, they were seen as something like that is something that you need to do for good governance. But in last about a decade or so, the feeling has changed that if you do not have the sustainable development goal, then the whole concept of the survival is there. It's not simply the question of that good governance, but it is the question of survival. So today, everybody, and I'm not going to spend time on this because all of us who are there are quite convinced about it, that it is something that we are discussing, which is fairly important. And since this is a platform for talking about children, it's all the more important. Now, the second point that I would say, which Cherian has said that, is about 3 decades back issue of that the corporate should do and the business should do business and the government should do the mitigation of all the chaos. And the governments must look into the welfare and think of that. That thought process is dated. I entirely agree with that. But at the same time, I would like to say certain thing that the overall mechanism of corporate doing great business, doing good business, government getting revenue out of it, and spending on the social subjects is something which is still, and it's I believe the most dominant, powerful engine to solve some of the world's problem. And as Kim has said, that there are a lot of things that the corporate can do, which in their general line of thinking, without getting into the social sector responsibility, is specifically in their own line of business, what they can do can be of great help to everybody. And it is, I will just cite 2 examples from Government of India's and from the India's perspective. Say if the corporate takes a lot of effort and start working into the circular economy, which the Government of India is attempting to kind of mainstream, and there are a lot of talk these days within the ministries that how do we get into this, then it's a win-win situation for all. It's a good business. It's a hugely good thing for the planet. The second example that I can take is of say certain thing like our quest for clean energy. There's a lot of business line which are opening where if the corporate move into that, there's a good business opportunity, say for instance, chemical for batteries and for other things. And there is also something that you're trying to do something good for the country. But then essentially we have to agree to what Cherian has said, that this is not sufficient. This is a necessary, but definitely not a sufficient condition for where we want to reach. And that is why we would like to say that, present that in about 2014, Government of India specifically went into this logic that corporates, while they are doing well, they must spend at least 2% of their pre-tax profit for the social responsibility, for the activities which is known as the corporate social responsibility, CSR. There are other incentives, there are other mechanisms as well, which do not get covered into that. And I'll very briefly mention 1 or 2 of them before turning back to the CSR. And that one is that there is like India, because of a mineral-rich country that it is, and there was a concept 2014 onwards, the concept is there of a district mineral fund. If you're going to extract mineral from a particular place, not only that you cause, and there is an adverse impact on the local environment, but also on the livelihood of the local people. So that's why there is a concept of a district mineral fund on which the people who are extracting the mineral are supposed to deposit certain amount of money with the government. It's a beautiful program, and which the governments are supposed to spend on the most critical need of the local population, besides mitigating some of the geographical changes that brings. And within the legislation itself, in the Minerals and Mines Act, you have that while you extract the mineral, you really reduce the damage to the environment. So, as I said, that if we look at 2-3 of the important way that the corporate has been kind of, we are attempting, and the Government of India is attempting, that corporate can channelize its beautiful power and its tremendous power to solve some of the major problem of the world, then I think this District Mineral Fund or the CSR Act, under which you are supposed to provide 2%, you need to be more than 5 crore profit or of a company of a particular size to do that. And the question now is that, yes, both the engines, how within the business itself, the corporate sector can do wonder, on which Kim has focused on that, and I'll not get into that. The second one is that how you can improve the CSR. And here I want to bring the program that Niti Aayog has been anchoring, and we call it Aspirational District Program. See, one thing that we discovered, that the world is full of good intentioned people, but they really do not know how to get themselves channelized. Because many times the problems are brought in front of them, or they come to know the problem in a very amorphous way. So we started a program called Aspirational District Program, out of which we identified around 112 India's backward district. And we looked into the importance of health and nutrition, focusing on children, and then agriculture and the water management, financial inclusion, skill development, and basic infrastructure. Now, these are fairly important things that affects the life of each and every person. And when we ask that, let the districts, those who manage the district, kind of map it very clearly that where they are in terms of the indicators. Now, that is something which started triggering a lot of good things. Because the first time that it became in the part of the consciousness of the district that, look, here it is that we are having huge problem, or we are very poor compared to our neighbors, or compared to best in the country, best in the state, or best in the world. So unless until you raise the awareness of the problem that you face in a more specific manner, there is a very little chance of somebody going to address that. And we, in the 4 years of time, I'm so happy to inform this August gathering that some of these elements that you understand where you are, you create a competition among the district teams, that I want to reach from place A to place B because my neighbor has done well, my people in the state have done well, people in the country have done well, why should I be left behind on this? And on that kind of competitive spirit, if you can do and channelize certain things, then it becomes the growth takes place without adding much resources. Now, that being the case, how can we make it better? And here, again, the role of the corporate comes into a big way. Our Honorable Prime Minister, about a few 2-3 years back, has said that as a corporate social responsibility, can you focus on certain important themes and can you channelize your energy to improve those kind of themes? So Niti Aayog was told to pick up the theme, and we said, okay, it was health and nutrition and education. And in that case, the government of India has provided advisory to the corporates in the public sector that at least 60% of your fund should get into the health, nutrition, and education. And while you deploy your fund of these corporate social CSR fund, we call it, while you deploy this fund, you give preference to aspirational district. And I'm happy to note that earlier these backward areas of India were receiving very less of the corporate fund. Today, they are receiving far more than that. But then again, when you talk to a lot of corporate, they say, okay, we want to do something good, but tell us what. And if you really do not structure it well, then a lot of good intentions remains the intention. So what we felt and what has been our evidence, that if you marry the corporate good intention with the requirement that the district feels, and if you have a good platform for that, the first and foremost is that there must be a lot of discussion between the corporate, the social arm, and that of the district administration. Because otherwise, what will happen is that you will suboptimally produce or provide good things, but it will suboptimal. A district may have critical need in childcare, but you may provide more for transport. That's also a good thing, but then it is definitely not. The marginal return of this money is less. So therefore, what is more important for us and what we have done in this particular program is that we have started a dialogue with the corporate and the district administration. Tell them where we are lacking, where we are lacking in terms of either less of monitoring, or we are lacking in terms of some of the fundamental basic resources which are not there, while government is doing its bits. But at the same time, what you can do is that you can supplement it, and in a much more forceful manner that it can be done. So these are some of the examples. I mean, in 4 years' time, there has been a very good integration with the corporate social arms and with the aspirational district program. And it has helped us because suppose I'm the chief of the corporate social arm, then I would like to say, oh, wow, in that particular district, the center where we kind of look after the children, these are some of the basic facilities are missing. Now, unless and until there's a place for it where you can see it, unless and until you have a dialogue with the district administration, it is something which is not going to be so much effective. So that is where I'm going to kind of wrap up and say that while what Cherian says is that there is a lot of value in corporate doing the great business and the business which is more amenable to these social problems, and there is a lot of things that we can have in that particular line and stream of thought. But at the same time, there is Government of India has a unique experience of creating the legislation, and there is a need now for us to increase the dialogue between what's the need and where the corporate money can flow. And it has, in the Aspirational District program, has shown tremendous potential as well as improvement. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your very, very concise and very crisp comments. Thank you so much. I think there are, again, so many learnings there that if we have to engage with corporates, there is a need for very extensive preparation. There is a need for dialogue so that we utilize resources as well as we can. And we really hope that the corporates, when they engage with government, when they engage with non-government agencies like ours, would have very, very well calibrated ways in which project investment, return on investment is actually computed. It's really important to structure projects well so that you get the best out of the projects and programs that are implemented. And therefore, it is important that impact is measured. We are able to talk about it. We are able to tell these stories very, very clearly and powerfully so that there would be far more encouragement for further investment by corporates in areas of greatest need in districts. Thank you again so much for taking us through this journey, and particularly the journey of Government of India in this endeavor. We have heard from a leading financial investor. We have heard from one of the largest governments in the world on the subject. We come now to hear from the corporate world on how corporations are addressing global goals. This is one of the conversations that we would be having over the next couple of days, today and tomorrow. And the whole area is to see what is the role of civil society, how corporations and civil society can make this journey together. And for that, we have Mr. Simon Noon, who is the CEO of OmniPay Incorporated from the Philippines. He has an extensive background in the Asia Pacific region as a professional in the financial industry, as well as a successful entrepreneur. He's president and CEO of OmniPay, which is Philippines' leading issuer of prepaid payment cards and innovator for financial inclusion. He's also the vice chairman of Bastion Payment Systems Corporation, which launched the first proprietary payment gateway for payment card industry standards. He is also the vice chair of the Sanson Mineral Resources and on the board of directors of Trans-Pacific Broadband Group International. So over to you, Simon. We really look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Cherian. Good morning, everyone. My assignment is to provide a corporate perspective on addressing the global goals and sharing our specific experience as OmniPay and why we partner with civil society. Next slide, please. So let's consider the role of corporations first and then tackle civil society a bit later. I thought it may be useful to provide a snapshot of the potential impact of corporations to the global goals. Although the data presented here is US only and somewhat dated, the outsized role of corporations in terms of available resources relative to government and nonprofit organizations is absolutely glaring. The takeaway message here is clear. Businesses must be involved to achieve the global goals. Next slide, please. Most people from corporate are familiar with environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, as a reportorial requirement, especially those that are publicly listed or in a highly regulated industry. Conversely, most are not as familiar with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. SDGs can be grouped into 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. The key takeaway here is that ESG and SDGs are not conflicting priorities. SDGs can help define and shape ESG outcomes. SDGs, though being more thematic than corporate-specific ESG factors, with broader societal and environmental goals. Next slide, please. Before sharing some of our experience as OmniPay, allow me to give a brief background of the company for some context. Next slide. OmniPay was incorporated with social development agenda in its DNA. We specifically targeted financial inclusion before the term was even coined. We basically targeted SDG number 10, reduced inequalities. We accomplished this by enabling the unbanked to access formal financial services. Consider the simple act of paying a utility bill. Those of us gathered here may pull out our mobile phone, tap a few keys, and pay our power bill. For the less privileged, paying a bill may mean taking time off work, commuting to a payment center, lining up to pay by cash, and then commuting back. If you consider the cost associated with that single payment transaction, the less privileged have a much higher transaction cost. Next slide, please. OmniPay operates under the supervision of the Central Bank of the Philippines. When we were applying for a license, my pitch to the late Central Bank Governor, Nesting Espinilla, was simple. Let the 20 credit card companies compete for the top 3%. Let the 600 banks compete for the top 25%. I'm not that greedy. Let me have the bottom 75%. With that, Governor Espinilla laughed and granted us the license. Next slide, please. One of our flagship programs was launched with the city of Bacoor in 2012. Here we were addressing SDG number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. We're now on its upteenth iteration. Basically, it's a dual wallet with financial assistance tracking. One wallet is owned by the citizen and it's unrestricted. The second wallet is a social assistance wallet funded by the city and restricted to city-approved merchants like clinics, pharmacies, groceries, and the like. OmniPay funded the cost of the physical card and the system development. The city of Bacoor collected the KYC of its adult citizenry and provided space at City Hall for registration and card personalization. In this program, sustainability is possible because OmniPay earns fee income from card usage at ATMs, point of sale, and online merchants. We call this model creating shared value. Next slide, please. As a financial institution, OmniPay must be profitable. Otherwise, the regulators will be forced to intervene. However, we consider profitability to be a measure of sustainability of our business, but it is not our only bottom line. This may not be possible for many companies, but we are blessed to have tightly knit shareholders who share the core value of contributing back to society. The term creating shared value was coined by Professor Michael Porter of Harvard Business School. He's better known as the guru of competitive strategy. Next slide, please. So what is creating shared value? At the very heart of things, creating shared value is competitive strategy. It's a deeper way of understanding capitalism from shareholders to stakeholders. It's the nexus of social needs, business opportunities, and corporate resources. Next slide, please. Companies engage in social good, primarily using 3 different models. Compared to the other 2 modalities, creating shared value is the only one that is inherently sustainable. For OmniPay, being able to create shared value is our default or preferred mode. However, not all social good can be realized through creating shared value, and that's really where we see the role of civil society playing such a critical part in our projects. Next slide, please. Corporations tend to focus on their core competencies. For OmniPay, civil society is a key partner to fill our gaps of expertise, people, or physical presence. The subsequent slides will show examples of philanthropy and CSR wherein OmniPay partners with civil society to accomplish specific SDGs. Next slide, please. The magnificent Philippine eagle is a national bird of the Philippines and one of the largest raptors. They're also listed as critically endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, with an estimated number of only 400 pairs left in the wild. OmniPay does not have the expertise nor the physical facilities to care for an eagle, so we partnered with the Philippine Eagle Foundation and adopted one. This is SDG number 15, Life on Land. Next slide, please. Here is an example of our corporate social responsibility. The conditional transfer program was one of our early programs we undertook. This is SDG number 1 and number 2, no poverty and zero hunger. We faced a lot of challenges. Sheer scale with millions of beneficiary households, including many in very remote and largely inaccessible areas with limited internet connectivity. Government regulations and audit concerns were oftentimes restrictive as well. Nonetheless, the CCT program sought to benefit the bottom of the Philippine society, so we were committed to the program as OmniPay. We also knew that the CCT beneficiaries would almost certainly be financially illiterate, so we were prepared for that. However, we were shocked to realize that many of the beneficiaries were basically illiterate as well. Next slide, please. Once again, we were very conscious that OmniPay does not have the expertise nor the capability to improve literacy in the Philippines, but this is addressing SDG number 4, quality education. We decided to partner with World Vision Philippines and the Department of Education in the Abutin Natin campaign by funding the urgently needed procurement of materials and equipment to support distance learning and homeschooling during the COVID-19 induced lockdown. Next slide, please. In summary, OmniPay endeavors to accomplish social good by creating shared value. But if that's not an option, we will consider philanthropy or corporate social responsibility. But irrespective of the modality, we always work with partners, corporate, government, or civil society. This is SDG number 17, Partnership for the Goals. In closing, let me leave you with this final thought from Os Hillman on the critical role of business. Consider that in the New Testament, of Jesus' 132 public appearances, 122 were in the marketplace. Of the 52 parables Jesus told, 45 had a workplace context. Of the 40 miracles recorded in the book of Acts, 39 occurred in the marketplace. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Simon, for that very powerful exposition on how corporations are addressing global goals. Thank you for those examples of how OmniPay is trying to create shared value for all stakeholders and through its business and the other businesses that you lead, which integrate financial services and technology, and actually the latest, the cutting edge in digital technology. And I think it really shows that technology can be used to serve and work for the poor and not just serve the wealthy. Also, the examples of how working with civil society, recognizing that there is a need to partner with government, with civil society organizations to make sure that these become a reality, I think, again, are very, very valuable lessons for us. Thank you so much. And I do hope that we would be able to share your presentation with all those who have attended and participated in this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We will now move on to the last part of our session this morning, and we have the last speaker, certainly not the least, and this is Marcus Frost, who is the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer of World Vision International, and he would look at the whole question of how World Vision partners with corporations in achieving the shared goals of SDGs. Marcus has nearly 30 years of experience. He's a seasoned executive with innovative marketing and communicative strategies in various organizations that he's worked, always bringing it to much higher levels of performance. He's worked across a range of sectors, not-for-profit, consumer technology, mobile, automotive, and others. And he's passionate about using disruptive marketing solutions for transformation. So over to you, Marcus. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cherian. And it's really great to be here despite the very early hour here in the UK. If we could go to the next slide, please. And the next slide, thank you. So first of all, I'd like to share a little bit about World Vision. Now, as a Christian relief, development and advocacy organisation, we're committed to helping the most vulnerable children overcome poverty. The needs of children around the world are massive. Let's consider just one example from the multiple sectors World Vision operates. Water, access to clean water. The UN estimates that 1 in 5 children worldwide don't have enough water to meet their everyday needs. But there's hope. We can make a big difference. World Vision has the size, the scale, and the expertise to dramatically improve children's lives. We work in 100 countries and reach children in some of the hardest and most dangerous places through our 35,000 staff. Last year alone, we reached 200 million vulnerable children. But no single organisation can tackle poverty alone. We are powered through our 20,000 partners like you, including corporations. This has helped us become the global NGO leader towards the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 6, SDG 6, which is about clean water and sanitation for all. When we work together, we can make an enormous and lasting difference. Next slide, please. At World Vision, we are focused on transforming children's lives. In this picture, we can see Himanshi. She's 11, and she lives in one of the hottest and driest districts in India. Clean water was scarce, which made it difficult for her to wash her hands. During the pandemic, she tried not to shake hands or even play with her friends to keep herself safe. She would travel to another village to fetch water, but that wasn't even clean, it was brown. Inevitably, Himanshi and her siblings would become unwell with fever and stomach aches many times. World Vision installed a solar water system to provide all families in Himanshi's community with clean water. And she says, now water is so easily available to me, I don't have to go far with my mother to fetch clean water. Now, if World Vision can change Himanshi's life, imagine the impact we can have on schools, communities, nations, and the world when we leverage our work in partnership with others. Now, SDG 6 is about clean water and sanitation. Now, poor sanitation and hygiene habits can be hard to break, and diarrhea continues to be a major killer disease for children. World Vision teamed up with Sesame Workshop to provide the wash-up program in schools and teach healthy habits to last a lifetime. So let's discover a little bit more about World Vision's partnership with Sesame Workshop in a short video.
Okay, good. I'm going to show you this picture, and I want you to tell me what's on this picture. Yes, Raya.
Hello, everyone. Hello. What's your name?
My name is Jeremiah.
Jeremiah. My name is Raya. Jeremiah, Raya.
World Vision and Sesame Street have an exciting new partnership to bring clean water, proper sanitation and hygiene to children in schools.
Okay, let me see your hands now. What? They're so nice and clean, Jeremiah.
This school program has been very special because we're dealing directly with children for whom everything that we do is intended for.
The Wash Up program includes multimedia educational materials that can be used in classrooms, they can be used in after-school clubs. We're really trying to make sure that these materials and that the Wash Up program can be used in multiple different ways.
Okay.
This program is very different because it's the children who are learning these behaviors, who are adapting and adopting them to be able to use them in their homes. It's the children who are delivering these messages.
Mostly when a child sees what he or she is learning, to be very difficult for that child to forget. We tell the children to go and teach their parents what they are learning at school.
I've learned a lot of things from Wanga. She has taught me how to clean the toilets,
how you're supposed to use the tip tap, and how you're supposed to wash the hands.
The really exciting thing about World Vision, partnering with Sesame Street, is that we're able to bring fun into our educational activities. Sesame Street has developed a wash-up kit that contains teachers' guides, videos, and games that the kids love.
For me, what's incredibly exciting is that we're hearing about households changing their behaviors. And it was because of this program. You really do see how these young children are taking the messages home and are impacting their entire family's health.
World Vision and Sesame Street would like to roll this program out across Zambia, learn how to do it even better, and then expand it through Africa and Asia.
What I love about that video is how the children who are learning all these new techniques then go home to their families and lead hygiene change in their household. It's just so empowering. If we could go to the next slide, please. So in addition to corporations, World Vision also partners with high net worth individuals. Dave and Dana Dornsythe are a great example. They are one of our most influential and long-term partners for bringing clean water to children. So we've proven that we can bring clean water to everyone in places where we work, which we are doing in Rwanda now, and we plan to finish the job in Zambia as well. Last year, we reached 3 million people with clean water, and we're on track to reach a much higher number this year. Our goal now is to bring clean water to everyone, everywhere we work. And final slide, please. So whether you're representing a corporation today that wants to make a big difference to children's lives, or you want to be personally playing a part in changing the world like the Dornsythes, you can do this with World Vision. World Vision has the size, scale, expertise, and global footprint. Children around the world are counting on us like never before. We can't just walk on by. Wouldn't it be great if we all played our parts in giving vulnerable children the very best start in life? So as you enjoy this limitless conference, have a think and listen to your heart about partnering with World Vision to protect their childhoods and make children's dreams come true. Thanks, Cherian.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I realize that we are, in some sense, we've reached the time that was allotted for the session in full. I also noticed that there were no questions in the question box. It really means that each of our speakers has articulated the issue so clearly that there is, I hope, not a single contrary view. But nonetheless, if there are questions or comments, please put them in the chat box. Even if we are not able to take them up during the session, we'll make sure that we will get back to you in person. I really don't want to take much more time in summarizing. We have seen how powerfully corporations can make a difference through examples that were shared by IFC, through the Government of India experience, through Simon's experience as a leading entrepreneur. And in terms of one area, just water and sanitation, World Vision's own experience, as Marcus shared, of how high net worth individuals and corporations can make a difference. And that the problems that we have are too big for any one of us, and that there is clearly a need to partner, get together, and join hands with governments, with each other, with all stakeholders and communities, so that the most vulnerable child, the most vulnerable communities are included in the whole process of growth, and that no one is left behind. We have at the end of our session a chance to release the regional SDG impact report. And I would request Rahul to put it up on the slide. This is a report that is being released at the time of this conference, specifically generated for this conference. Look at it, see how World Vision as a region is making a difference in the achievement of the SDGs in this region. And our rallying call is really for corporations, businesses, individuals, families, large and small, to come together, help save and transform lives. Over the last 70 years, World Vision has built up one of the largest platforms for transformational and sustainable change in children's lives through our holistic and field-tested program models. In the last year in the Asia Pacific region, we impacted close to 19 million people, of which 7.5 million were children. So join us in this journey, learn about our impact, learn about our promise, and see how together all of us can contribute towards achievement of the global goals. Thank you. And over to you, Rahul.
Thank you, Cherian, and thank you all of the speakers for joining for the opening plenary. We've learned a lot during the session, right from Kim speaking about the KFCs, how it's enabling the private sector, how India and the government of India, how is using the CSR resources to be able to improve the aspirational districts programs, and how Simon spoke about how the corporations are focused on the global goals as well, and how we as World Vision are impacting the lives of children. You can read much more about that on the report, which is shared on the public chat. Thank you all for joining. Up next is our session, Youth as Drivers of Inclusive Economic Growth. You could go backstage onto the schedule and log into the next session. Thank you all for joining for this session, and have a good rest of the day.